Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine.
It's fair enough to say that. And I just want to say, thanks to the damn Russians.
Joe. Little fucking Joe Lindsley.
Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting.
Welcome to Ukraine Bank.
Joseph Lindsley has been doing some traveling in Ukraine. He's in Kyiv today. Let's check in with him now. Joseph, I assume that you were happy to hear that the European Union approved a $54 billion deal to fund Ukraine.
Bob, indeed, that is big news. Hello from Kyiv. I traveled west from Kharkiv, and it's a very big breakthrough in the EU because the nation of Hungary, which borders Ukraine on the west, its prime minister is an ally or kind of a pal of Putin, and he was reluctant to agree to this, but in the end they got the deal, and this support is very important to keep. Where most of the military support has come from the U.S., also from the U.K. and Germany, but the European Union has really helped with keeping Ukraine afloat financially. You got to help pay people's salaries in the military and the government, and so this is very crucial. That while there's stagnation regarding support in the U.S., that the Europeans are moving forward on this. The countries that are closest to Ukraine. The countries that suffered under Soviet tyranny, that have a strong memory of the 20th century, like the Baltic countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they give up to about 50% of their own defense budgets to Ukraine. They give more than 1% of GDP to support Ukraine in different ways because they feel the threat. But it's typically countries further away that don't feel it in the same way. And even at a micro level, I can feel that today. I mean, I spent the past several weeks, 30 miles from Russia and in Kharkiv, a city that the Russians have been pounding so frequently. Kharkiv is not really protected by air defense. There's no American Patriot missile batteries there to protect the city. And Ukrainians do not have permission from the U.S. to use weapons supplied by the West to hit the bases from which Russia attacks Kharkiv. There's no buffer zone there. And so that city is incredibly vulnerable. And, I spent the past several weeks sleeping on the floor most nights of a bathroom so I could get some rest, without always having to go to the shelter. And it's amazing, just coming here, a 6-hour train ride, 5-hour train ride to Kyiv, a city that is pretty well protected by air defense, even though it is, fairly often attacked. And just a shift in mindset, I no longer imagine, what would it be like if this wall next to me disappears in a few minutes? Which direction will the blast blow me? And as I was running today through Kyiv, I could just listen to music and run. I didn't have to check the constant reports of which way the missiles are flying. And so there is, even though this is the whole country's at war, there is a different sense of urgency. When you're in a place like Kharkiv, and it does, in many ways, life feels much more normal here compared to the sort of always war-ready mentality there in Kharkiv. And as I was on the train, I always have some time to reflect and think. And I was catching up on correspondence, and a few weeks ago we talked about the Ukrainian word for victory, meaning перемога, which means literally in the roots of the language. Means doing something beyond your ability, something kind of miraculous, and so some people wrote to me and said, in Russian, I don't know the Russian language. In Russian, the word that they're using right now in Russia for victory is pobeda, something like that, and it means after the trouble. So when Ukrainians are crying for, yelling, cheering, toasting, and cheering for victory, they're speaking in this very optimistic sense. That they can do the impossible, перемога. And when Russians are using that word for victory, it means after the trouble. It's just yet another indication of two very different mindsets in this war.
Very different mindsets for sure. Email from one of our listeners named John. Hi, Bob and Joseph. I just watched Joseph on Silicon Curtain with Jonathan Fink. It was an excellent show with a great discussion. Very nice to hear an in-depth discussion. Many comments included that they did not know how Joseph was doing. I encourage them to listen to your daily talk on WGN Radio. Thanks for continuing to share the importance of a Ukrainian victory and what it means to the world. All the best. And what is this, Joseph? Silicon Curtain.
Silicon Curtain is one of the great wartime podcasts that has arisen during this time. And the host is a guy from the UK called Jonathan Fink. And he interviews a great variety of people. One of his regular guests is former top American General Ben Hodges. He interviews some of the most interesting Ukrainians and foreigners who are either part of this in some way or analyzing the situation. And you can watch that video if you go to UkrainianFreedomNews.com and click on any of our videos to go to YouTube. And he's got several different episodes a week. And some of those episodes get about 250,000 views. And so it is a great way to stay informed. And what I like about speaking with Jonathan, it's about an hour-long interview. You can get to the sort of philosophical roots of, you can talk a bit about political theory and military history. And so it's a great, it's one of the great places to sort of figure out. I think one of his main missions there in that podcast is to figure out how to counter propaganda and really to study, the artfulness of Russian propaganda, so we can be better aware of it. And as you can see that at UkrainianFreedomNews.com, and speaking of things, propaganda and all, there's a lot of things swirling around right now, and a lot of this has to do with the rumors regarding Ukraine's commander-in-chief, General Zaluzhnyi. There's some, as we mentioned yesterday, Financial Times and others have reported that, his departure is imminent. He'll be made to resign or something. There's almost everyone with whom I speak here in Ukraine, whether, in person in Kharkiv these past days or just communicating with people by text throughout the country, there's such a affection for General Zaluzhnyi. And so the mood is that if he were to be dismissed, people would be quite angry. That's pretty universal. I know there's obviously some dissent on that, but I'd say it's close to universal feeling. But this could be something that is, stoked by people on the outside. It's also very notable that yesterday at CNN, the same Valery Zaluzhnyi, Ukraine's commander-in-chief, has an op-ed, and it's called "The Design of War Has Changed." And he's really talking about how it necessarily must be, in order to win, you have to be technologically the best and the most innovative. And that's what Ukrainians have that's why they've been able to hold on for 2 years. Some people are taking this op-ed, those American voices who sort of oppose Ukraine or don't think it's wise to support Ukraine are taking this op-ed as a sign of failure, saying, well, a small country can never really win against a nation with the human resources of Russia. But that's exactly what Zaluzhnyi is saying. I mean, if you just look at it that way, the smaller guy can never win unless he innovates. So that's the purpose of this op-ed. We'll see how this shakes out. I mean, it is very interesting also to note that, we talked the other day as well about the arrival of Victoria Nuland, Undersecretary of State for the U.S., here in Kyiv. It makes the conspiracy theorists go wild. She doesn't have that much power as they claim, but she's very well connected to, her husband started the Project for the New American Century, was a co-founder, actually with one of my former first boss, Bill Kristol at the Weekly Standard. So these are the people who design wars. I mean, a lot of things I ran away from and stopped agreeing with, the Iraq War and Afghanistan War. But there are, the people who created the surge in Afghanistan is actually the two architects. The surge in Iraq in 2006. The architects of that are actually Victoria Nuland's brother-in-law and sister-in-law. They both run the Institute for the Study of War. They have an analysis on X/Twitter today about Zaluzhnyi's op-ed. But we do have to wonder. I mean, did the United States send some of its key strategists here these past couple days to help figure out what's going on with the situation between Zelensky and Zaluzhnyi? It's possible. We don't know. Meanwhile, I think that the big, there's always the question of when will the F-16s get here? When will real, weapons, long-range weapons, come to Ukraine? And I was reading back at some of the history of it. Going back to May of this year, there's been a small but bipartisan movement in Congress to actually send Ukraine what they need to get the fighter jets here, and the White House has been very reluctant on it to do so. And even in the current package, about the same value of the EU spending package, the package that is stuck in Washington to support Ukraine. There's nothing in that would include, changing the game. Nothing really that you see in Zaluzhny's op-ed, the sort of technology you need to change things. It's just more of sort of life support to keep the situation going. And so I think we're seeing behind the scenes, there's more negotiations, I think, and more feverish arguments than we can even imagine. But hopefully some of this spills out into the public consciousness so Americans can have an honest debate about if they want to support Ukraine. And if they do, will they send the tools necessary for victory?
Joe, these podcasts that you are on, your posts, your videos, are you surprised the Russians haven't tried to stop those in some way? I think about that whenever we have a momentary interruption in our talks here.
Yeah, well, both digitally and, it was a bit of a concern these past weeks when I was in Kharkiv. I mean, Kharkiv is a city of such, strong, patriotic Ukrainians, but it's so close to Russia, and there's many Russian speakers there. We know there are still spies there. The hotels have been targeted. And so there, I had to be incredibly cautious, knowing that, you're very close to the enemy. The enemy could be much closer than you even imagine. So for sure. And I think, the Russians, you can't be paranoid, but just have to be vigilant and, but never let, never let those fears get in the way of truth. And I think that's one thing I leave Kharkiv with a boost of additional courage. There's something you get by being in that city, facing those missile attacks. It does make you sort of more focused and stronger. And so, it's like, in America, people talk about taking the ice baths every morning. In Kharkiv, you have a missile bath. It makes you focused.
Wow. You'll get a kick out of knowing that whenever we have some sort of technical difficulty now here at WGN, we always say, it's those damn Russians. I hope you have some peace this weekend, Joe.
It's fair enough to say that. And I just want to say, by the way, the war, I was joking about the missile baths, but there are people who lost their lives, also civilians, who still losing their lives all the time. And so I don't ever, we got to keep our spirits up, but I don't ever want to forget that. But yeah, thanks to the damn Russians as well. So Bob, until Monday, thank you.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?